On October 25th, 2010, country singer-songwriter superstar Taylor Swift dropped Speak Now, her third studio album. Fresh off winning Album of the Year at the Grammys for Fearless, the then youngest winner at the time, all eyes were on Swift. People wondered how Swift would evolve as an artist or if her stellar run was just a fluke. It ended up not being a fluke. The album debuted selling 1 million copies in its first week, during a time where streaming was barely getting started. It spent 6 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Speak Now spawned 6 singles, 2 of which hit the top 10, and garnered 3 Grammy nominations, 1 for Best Country Album and 2 wins for Mean, which ended up winning Best Country Solo and Best Country Song in 2012. In spite of its success, I often see Speak Now overlooked in discussions about Swift's discography. Not to say that there aren't devoted Speak Now stans, some of them even calling it her best album, but it is understandable. This is the album that had to follow up her breakout record and precede what many consider to be her magnum opus and first foray into the pop genre. In this video, we're going to revisit and relive the Speak Now era while I point out 3 huge reasons why I think this album and era may have helped create the Taylor Swift that we love and know today. Let's talk about the story of Speak Now. To really understand how Speak Now came to be, we have to go back in time to 2009. Fearless was a behemoth of an album, taking 11 non-consecutive weeks at the top of the charts. It was the best-selling album of that year. Love Story and You Belong With Me dominated the radio and the charts, the former peaking at 4, the latter peaking in the top 2. Swift was becoming a household name. She briefly dated Taylor Lautner, who was her co-star in her first proper acting role for a movie. Remember that? That's important for later. But she really went supernova when the infamous 2009 MTV Music Awards incident happened. I recall seeing it live, and the few people who did not know who Taylor Swift was found out who she was that night. I remember the day after Kanye Gate, a few people at my middle school, yes, I'm old, rallied behind Swift and quickly became fans, not just out of sympathy, but because her music really spoke to them. It's ironic that the 2 women involved continue to be upstanding, successful superstars who represent the best in their industry, and Kanye, well, he's still an asshole. Shortly afterwards in 2010, Fearless won Album of the Year and Best Country Album. White Horse even took Female Country Vocal and Best Country Song. On that same night, she got to perform with Stevie Nicks in a performance that drew criticism for weak vocals. Keep that in mind, that's important for later. I have to imagine that the pressures of scrutiny, a brutal touring schedule, and becoming a celebrity nearly overnight forged the diamond that is Speak Now. She wrote every track on the standard version alone, with just one co-write making the deluxe version of the album. Swift teamed up with her then go-to producer Nathan Chapman, who produced much of the record. Swift received a co-production credit as well for shepherding the sound of the record. Speak Now ultimately ended up becoming a country pop record like Fearless, though the hooky nature and permeating pop rock elements created debate over what genre it is. Mean evoked bluegrass and was extremely country. Sparks Fly feels like arena rock with some fiddles in there. She dabbles in pop punk with The Story of Us and Better Than Revenge. Even the ballads on the record have variety, yet Swift's songwriting and Chapman's production make for a pretty cohesive and clean record all around. The initial working title of the album was Enchanted, but Scott Borchetta urged Taylor to choose another title. Swift would settle on Speak Now, calling it a metaphor. This album seemed like the opportunity to speak now or forever hold my peace. Thematically, Speak Now was a confessional record that left behind Fearless's romanticism for more grounded and mature subjects. Speak Now was more introspective yet direct and confrontational, unafraid to directly reference Swift's public life. It built off the precedent set by Forever and Always, where you'd know who she was singing about on quite a few tracks. Conversely, it also fostered Swift's ability to write off pure imagination. Tracks like Speak Now and Never Grow Up are rooted within scenarios that Swift would imagine, an early preview for the writing that she would do on Folklore and Evermore perhaps. Before I talk about the tracks in depth, I do want to talk about 3 key elements that I noticed about the Speak Now era that really set up and formed the Taylor Swift that we know today. Developing Taylor Swift, the brand. Speak Now as an era really formed the basis for Taylor Swift as a brand. One does not sell 1 million records without promoting the hell out of their record. Taylor made strategic partnerships with many brands. I recall Speak Now was available for purchase just about everywhere. Starbucks carried copies, as did Target, who launched their own advertisement for a special version of the album that contained 3 bonus tracks and a unique red version of the cover. On top of that, Swift partnered with CoverGirl, who served as a sponsor on the world tour for the record. Elizabeth Arden, a cosmetics and fragrance brand who worked with her, created Wonderstruck, the first in a series of scents that Swift developed. Swift even helped design the packaging for that scent. Taylor worked with American Greetings on a series of cards, and she even worked with Sony to promote point-and-shoot cameras and even tablets in her music video for Ours. These moves worked in her favor, essentially introducing her to new audiences while proving she was a bankable star and role model that companies could rely on to sell more than just her music. This was truly the start of her capitalism era, which led to her becoming the face of Diet Coke, Ked Shoes, and now Capital One. Swift realizing her worth's worth. I'm gonna say it a million times, but there's something very important to Swift being the sole writer on this album. For one, it's extremely impressive for an artist, let alone one who was just 20 at the time, to take full stewardship of a studio album. The trust that her former label had in her, the opportunities that she had to branch out to writing camps and big producers that she had turned down, it's a triumph that very few artists are ever afforded. Speak Now feels like her most personal album to date because of that lyrical intimacy. In 2019, she would confirm that she wrote the album as a reaction to critics doubting her ability to songwrite. Normally, co-writers are brought in to foster new ideas or to balance artistic whims that may drag down a project overall, but Swift's self-restraint and talent for hooks and song structure came through. This is purely speculative, but I like to believe that Speak Now may have been the starting point for what would eventually become her war against Scooter Braun over owning her masters. I like to imagine that Swift, upon completing this album, really internalized the worth of her words and may have realized that it was important to eventually buy back her masters. Being the sole writer of your music not only enriches your artistic image, but in the world of song publishing, it's a holy grail. Royalties aren't split with anyone but you. Speak Now was extremely successful and likely made Taylor even richer than she already was at the time. Of all of the re-recordings, I imagine that Speak Now might be one of the most valuable, both sentimentally and monetarily, to Swift. I would not be surprised if Speak Now ended up becoming Taylor's favorite record to reclaim, and I do look forward to her owning her words on this album most of all. Setting the record straight. My last major observation for this album is more or less how it set into motion Taylor's reputation, no pun intended, for being known as the pop girl who overshares. It's an unfair distinction that has haunted her for many years, but is finally being celebrated. Speak Now started a journey for Swift in taking authorship over her music, career, and personal life, the latter becoming open season for tabloids. Songs on the album transparently and earnestly address her public relationships as well as her critics. Back to December flipped the script and presented a sincere power ballad apology to an ex-lover, something that she had not done yet in her career. Some speculate that it was addressed to Taylor Lautner. Dear John, the longest track on the album, presented a bluesy, soft rock open letter ballad telling her former manipulative flame that it's over. Some consider it amongst the best songs of her career. John Mayer, who believes that he was the subject of said song, lashed out in an interview years long past the release of the song. It said that he was also the subject of The Story of Us, which Swift confirmed was about an awkward encounter with an ex at an award show. Some people may not know this, but Mean was a response to literal blogger trolls. Some speculate it to be Bob Lovesetts, who was a critic who criticized Taylor for possibly even killing her career after her iffy performance at the 52nd Grammy Awards. The Tay voodoo is real because she went on to win 2 Grammys for that song. While Innocent served as a public response to Kanye West following the 2009 incident, being a graceful ballad that served as an expression of sympathy for West and hope that he would redeem himself one day. Yeah, that never happened. Swift has gone on to use her music throughout her career to speak her truth in a way not many of her contemporaries can do. I argue that Speak Now and Reputation are very much sister records, both inherently about Swift reclaiming her narrative across different pivotal moments of her life. Where Reputation spoke about the aftermath of a fall from grace, Speak Now painted a cautious ascent to the upper echelon of pop society. If you made it this far, welcome to my track-by-track review. Mine served as the lead single and the album opener. I personally thought that it was a strong track, but it felt a little too much like Fearless. Lyrically, it's descriptive, rich, and the bridge is quite iconic, but the music video really breaks apart Swift's fairy tale imagery from the last album to paint something more grounded and mature. I do love how the country really did turn up on this track. Okay, Sparks Fly is an absolute banger of a track. Fans begged her to record it after they saw videos of her perform this at bar shows when she was just starting out and she was just 16, and I totally get why they were begging for this track. It's this thrilling pop rock jam about a dangerous love affair that you just can't quit. It has fiddles and the writing is immaculate. Drop everything now to the chorus of I See Sparks Fly, and that one line, give me something that'll haunt me when you're not around, that last line. There's a billion hooks in the song, but the bridge, I will say, has so much like power. This is like the Golden Gate Bridge of the album's bridges. It is one of my all-time favorite tracks. Back to December really aged beautifully. It's one of her best ballads even after all of these years. You gave me roses and I left them there to die is an all-time lyric. It's so beautifully produced and I'm stunned how universal it feels. Anyone who's had to break something off can really relate. I argue the only dumping song that holds a candle to this one is Champagne Problems. Speak Now was really the perfect title track in hindsight. The way that she'd perform it on tour, literally retelling the story of the track, a dream that she had where she saw one of her exes marry another girl. I just love how twangy it is, the sincerity of the lyrics. I like to pretend that this track is a distant ancestor to the vivid, rich storytelling that she does on Folklore and Evermore. My favorite line has to be, the delivery is just so sassy, her mind. Dear John I've already spoken about. Despite the target being quite obvious, the song is so relatable and earnest and honestly kind of vicious. Would've, could've, should've's, older sister for sure. You should have known is definitely a sister lyric, but the favorite lines of mine are so don't look now, I'm shining like fireworks over your sad empty town. Hot take, but Mean is a better LGBTQ anthem than You Need to Calm Down. Not to overshare, but my younger self really loved that song a lot. Someday I'll be living in a big old city is a prophecy because I did do that. And the bridge is just a rip on her critics, like damn, she went in. The Story of Us is an underrated gem. I really love the pop punk vibes on the track, the way that she plays with the lyrics, and how the syllables really flow into a catchy earworm of a chorus. I felt like the song was a clever deconstruction of fairy tales and reality, which tends to be more disappointing than the former. This song was perfect for the radio, each verse being a chapter and then the end at the end. Brilliant. Never Grow Up has to be one of the saddest, most real songs on the record, possibly her entire discography. It's an absolute tearjerker of a track. The second verse where she talks about how her mom's getting older too guts me every time. If you've ever moved to a big city, you will think of those lines about moving to the apartment that's much colder than you thought that it'd be and how you have to tuck yourself in and turn the nightlight on. Definitely a deep cut to remember. Enchanted was my favorite track on first listen, and it still probably is in my top 5 deep cuts of all time. She immortalized the word wonderstruck in this beautiful ballad that just builds up into a killer chorus and a bridge that always has me yelling along. The rock elements in this track, it's made to be sung along to in an arena, and I hope that she includes this on the Eras Tour set list. It's the quintessential romantic Swift that we all know and love, with verses that tell a beautiful story about falling in love with someone. Please don't be in love with someone else. Please don't have somebody waiting on you. It's so simple, but it speaks so much volumes about the level of longing that she has. It's a must listen. Better Than Revenge is often bashed as an immature, slut-shamey song or proof that Taylor's feminist angle is false, but I will say that it contains some of her best vocals of the time. I have to say that it's very camp, her singing about plotting revenge against the woman that stole her man. I feel like it's one of the most human tracks that Swift has ever made in her life, and a keen reminder that even our heroes have their moments. It's an absolute earworm and a banger, and I will defend it. I support women's rights and women's wrongs. I'll be honest here, Innocent was never a favorite of mine. I think that it's very well written and it was a sweet gesture at the time, but it runs way too long. Unlike the other tracks that hit the 5 or 6 minute marks, I felt like this one was really exhausting. Haunted is a pretty good, solid deep cut. I love the vocals on the track and the production on this one. It's pretty effective, but like Innocent, it kind of gets lost in the shuffle of the other songs. I do love the metaphor of a fading love turning into a ghost. Last Kiss, now this song deserves all 6 minutes and to be track 13. It is the stunning, heartbreaking odyssey of a country waltz about desperation that you feel after a crushing breakup. The way that July 9th is a celebrated holiday among Swifties. This bridge, yet again, the star of the show because it's so realistic. The lines about watching your ex's lives through photographs like you used to watch them sleep, to keeping up with old friends, and the lines about planning for a change in weather and time but never planning for them to change their mind. Absolutely heartbreaking, and one of her best tracks ever, and there are many. The album closer, Long Live, is a dedication and expression of thanks to her bandmates and her fans who stuck with her. It's a very sweet closer that acknowledges that she couldn't have done it all alone. I argue that it's one of her best album closers to date. I had the time of my life fighting dragons with you is such a perfect line. Another point to add to my Reputation sister album theory is that this song and New Year's Day were mashed together on her tour. We need to talk about the Target bonus tracks. I thought that the Target bonus tracks were smartly left off. I feel like the songwriting quality just did not match the standard version's bar. Ours is a very cute fan favorite, the melody is adorable, the lyrics are charming if not naive, but the subject matter is done a lot better on mine. I still adore the track. If This Was a Movie is the only co-write on the deluxe, written with Martin Johnson. Again, lovely track about dreaming about an ex coming back to you, at the end of the movie. But it does not hold a candle to Back to December or Last Kiss, lyrically or melodically. The final track is Superman, which is a really cute pop rock track comparing someone to the superhero and hoping that he'll come back for her someday. It feels very juvenile compared to the other tracks and just did not really thematically fit into the record, but it is a charming track and I do love to hear it play when I shop at my local grocery store. So my overall thoughts, in summary, Speak Now is a pivotal, if not underrated, and overlooked part of Swift's canon. The album and era established a lot of hallmark tropes for one of the greatest songwriters and musicians of the modern era. I believe that the album will receive its flowers upon receiving the Taylor's version treatment. I do understand why some fans would rank this high on their list, and I do concur that Speak Now is a brilliant album. Is it her best though? The jury's out on that one, but I will say that it is one of the most impactful records that she's made, and I do hope that people appreciate it. And that's a wrap. Thank you guys so much for waiting patiently for this video. I've covered most of Taylor's other eras, and I felt like revisiting this one was very important. Please let me know in the comments what your favorite tracks were, if you disagreed with anything that I said, or you have any insights. I love reading your comments. I try to respond and reply to as many as I can. Quick shout out to my members. Thank you so much for being supportive of my channel. I really do owe you guys quite a bit. And live streams are coming back. We will be doing live listening sessions every Saturday. I'm just super grateful to be back and here and posting frequently. Keep your eyes open for whatever I post, and I'm just super grateful. Thank you so much. Like, subscribe, comment, and, just live a good life, I guess.